You said yesterday that there's a lot about this process that you don't like and that makes you uncomfortable. I would love to hear more about it, but I recognize that you probably wouldn't answer that question, that you can't and therefore won't answer. I think, as a newbie here, I think I'm one of 5 people in the U.S. Senate that's never run for anything before in my life, before getting here. I think that this Congress does not function as it should on a broad range of issues. You said yesterday that this is still the greatest deliberative body in the world. I hope that that can be true again. But humbly, there are a whole bunch of not-for-profit boards in my little town of Fremont, Nebraska that function a lot better at deliberation than the U.S. Senate does right now. Speaker Pelosi, or Leader Pelosi, is not a member of the Senate, but the U.S. Congress is a place that the American people look at, and when they see us, they don't primarily see public servants. They don't primarily see a distinction between the Article I branch, in which we serve as the legislature, versus an Article II and III branch that are supposed to check and balance one another. They don't primarily see a distinction between the House and the Senate. They primarily see political parties. And our founders didn't intend that. George Washington's farewell address spoke directly to the danger of faction. We live in an era where there's going to be even more disintermediation of public discourse through media channels as the barriers to entry get smaller and the digitization of journalism creates a world where there are going to be much more fragmented conversations. It is possible for us to just silo ourselves in a way where we create an echo chamber around ourselves so we only have to talk to and listen to people who already agree with us. The domain of shared facts is declining, and it's a really dangerous thing. And I worry about what comes next for the country. I worry about what comes next for public discourse broadly. I worry about what comes next in this institution. And I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but I think that people who've watched these hearings over the course of the last 3 days know that you should be confirmed, know that you will be confirmed, and know that comments like Leader Pelosi's, that if you are an American who drinks water or breathes air, they should be scared of you. That's absurd. And my colleagues know that it's absurd. And there is a real danger in not condemning that kind of reckless speech. As is kind of well known, I think I'm the 3rd or 4th most conservative guy in the U.S. Senate by voting record, but I'm not particularly partisan, and I've not been bashful about speaking out against my party when my party has been reckless about facts. And I hope that some of the folks on the other side of the aisle, as we head toward a vote in this committee and then we head toward a vote on the floor in 2 weeks, will also speak out against the kind of reckless nonsense of telling the American people, who have day jobs, by the way. There are some folks who are watching on C-SPAN, and that's wonderful. There are parents and teachers in Nebraska and across the country who are using the C-SPAN hearings here as an occasion to teach their kids civics, and that's great. We need a more engaged public. But most people aren't watching these hearings. And most people are going to see some headline summary of what happened 2 weeks from now after there's a vote. And when the vote for you should be 95-0 or 95-5 or 100-0, math wasn't my strong suit. So Frank and I'll fill me in on the difference between 1924 and 1925. When they see a final vote, if it isn't something overwhelming, if they see something that looks like Republicans voted one way and Democrats voted another way, and they have echoing in their ears the sounds of people saying that you are some sort of a shill for big business and that the American people should be scared of you, we will have in this body done something to further erode the public trust. And so I sincerely hope that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, as they approach voting, will recognize that the audience after they vote isn't just people in their next primary who want to see a greater politicization of every question in American life, but the audience for their vote is also going to be people who 10 and 15 and 20 years from now are going to look back on this body at this time and next year and 2 and 3 years from now and say, did we work to create a bigger and broader domain of shared facts and of shared public trust? I know you won't comment on this confirmation process directly because it is fundamentally a political question, but I wonder if you might comment a little bit on how you see the interplay between Article 1 and Article 2 coming together to create a new member of the court, the highest court of Article 3. Obviously, the president nominates someone to serve on the Supreme Court, and we have the constitutional duty in the Article 1 branch of providing advice and consent. Some of us have done that, both with the last president and with this president, have given advice on the kinds of people that we think should be on the court, and we ultimately have a duty to consent or not to consent. It could be done in this committee, or it could be done exclusively on the floor in the full body. It could be done, as you mentioned, with Justice White. It could be done in 90 minutes, or it can be done over the course of 2 weeks. There are lots of ways that the Senate could organize itself. But could you help the American people understand, what do you think are the hardest questions that should rightly be being put to you and to future nominees for the court when we are doing our duty to having, after provided often private advice to the president, but also in public about the future, and when we're deliberating about consenting or not consenting, what are the hardest questions that you think it's appropriate that this body would ask of nominees?
Senator, I'm grateful for the question, but that is one I'm going to have to respectfully decline to answer, out of respect for the separation of powers. I just don't think it's appropriate for an Article 3 judge to be trying to tell this body how to do its business. I just don't. Of course, I have my personal thoughts. I put them over there. I'm a judge. And respectfully, I have more optimism for this country. I do. And I have more optimism for this body and for the Congress as a whole. I've seen it work. And maybe I'll just leave it there.
I hope you're proved right. I'd like to pursue something that Senator Cruz asked about a few minutes ago. There has been a presupposition behind some questions earlier today that if you believe in textualism, if you believe in originalism, if you believe that one of the core jobs of someone who sits on the bench is to understand the original public meaning, that somehow that means you're locked in time in history in 1788. Our Constitution has this glorious amendment process. Can you explain the relationship between the amendment process and originalism? Since the document does evolve in a formal, explicit, amended way, how does that relate to original public understanding?
The Constitution is a law, like any other law. It's our foundational law, and it was drafted to last. Maybe unlike certain other pieces of legislation that this body might think outdated and wish to update. That's its prerogative. The Constitution was designed to last. And it was a brilliant, brilliant document. I mean, the founders really were amazing. If you ever go to Philadelphia, you gotta go to Independence Hall and the Constitutional Center there and see how it happened. It's inspiring. And part of the wisdom of the document is the recognition, the humility that even the founders, brilliant as they were, could not anticipate what might happen 100 years, 200 years. We might hope a lot longer than that down the line. And so they recognize that ultimately it's about we the people. The people are sovereign in this country, not a king, not a class. And if the people wish to change their constitution, there's a provision, there's a way to do that. It's a government by the people and for the people. And that's the amendment process in a nutshell, Senator.
As a sitting Supreme Court justice tasked with upholding the U.S. Constitution, is it ever appropriate to cite international law? And if so, why?
I'm not going to, it's not categorically improper. There are some circumstances when it's not just proper but necessary. You're interpreting a contract with a choice of law provision that may adopt a foreign law. That's an appropriate time to look at any choice of law provision by any party in any contract. Treaties sometimes require you to look at international law by their terms. But if we're talking about interpreting the Constitution of the United States, we have our own tradition and our own history. And I don't know why we would look to the experience of other countries rather than to our own, when everybody else looks to us for all the imperfections of our rule of law. It is still the shining example in the world. That's not to say we should sweep our problems under the rug or pretend that we've solved all of the problems in our culture, in our society, in our civic discourse. But it is to say that we have our history and our Constitution. And it's by we the people. And so, as a general matter, Senator, I would say it's improper to look abroad when interpreting the Constitution, as a general matter.
How do independent agencies fit in a constitutional system of three branches?
Senator, independent agencies are in the executive branch, and there's a case called Humphrey's Executor that was decided in the 1930s that permits independent agencies to be created. By an independent agency, we mean that it's headed by usually a group of individuals who are removable only for cause, as opposed to at will.
How do you understand the term American exceptionalism?
I think that term means many things to many people, Senator, and I don't wish to get involved in politics. I've spoken as to how I see our Constitution and the brilliance of it and the reverence I hold for it. And I think I'll just leave it there, with your permission.
What role does the Declaration of Independence play in interpreting the Constitution?
The Declaration of Independence is an amazing document, right? These are men who, as Benjamin Franklin said, we either hang together or we hang separately. When they put their name to that document, it was a death warrant if they failed. That's why John Hancock is now synonymous with a signature. No one remembers who John Hancock was, but they know that that's a signature because he wrote his name so big and boldly.
You just said bigly.
Bigly.
And I just won $5.
You embarrassed me in front of my nephew, and he loves it.
He's the one paying me the $5.
The Declaration of Independence, I think. Is that where we were?
I think my work here is done, but I do want to hear your answer.
Anyway, John Hancock, right? Signature. That was his death warrant. But he didn't want the king to have any ambiguity about who it was that was signing that document. He knew it was his death warrant. That's remarkable. That remarkable thing that the men and the women who fought for our freedom. With all apologies to my British wife. It is, however, not the law. The Declaration is not the law. It is a Declaration of Independence. The Constitution is the foundational document and the foundational law of the country, to answer your question. The Declaration, I think, certainly informs every American and should inform a judge in understanding the background of the Constitution and our laws. It's not a document that should be lightly discarded.
Thank you. I do still want to ask you some questions about the 9th and 10th Amendment, but I'll save that for future rounds as I'm at time. Thank you, Chairman.